Today, I'm going to be talking to you about how you can keep yourself safe in the garden while using tools. Gardening is a lot of fun, it's extremely rewarding, but it's also a lot of hard work. We often use tools in the garden to make our jobs a little bit easier, but sometimes if we use the tools improperly, we can actually harm ourselves more than we help ourselves. So, the first tip is hydrate and stretch. The most important tool that you have on the farm or in the garden is your body. And if you don't take care of yourself, then you'll never be able to do the work properly. So be sure to drink lots of water before you start working and while you're working. And don't forget to stretch before you start doing anything at all. My number one tip for stretching is to start from your toes and work your way all the way up to your head. Don't forget to get your wrists, your fingers, and your neck. There's a lot of looking and moving that you'll be doing while working in the garden. Tip number 2. Be sure to wear the proper equipment. You want to make sure that you're wearing closed-toed shoes, some kind of gloves or something to cover your hands with, as well as sunglasses or safety glasses if you want to be sure to keep your eyes and everything else around you safe. Tip number 3, always make sure that the tools that you're going to use are in good working condition. The first thing that you should always check is the handle. Make sure there's no cracks, splinters, or anything that's going to break while you're using it. And then also check the tool head. Make sure that it's sharp and ready to be used. Tip number 4, ensure that you know how to use the tool before using it. Improperly using a tool is the number one cause of injury and strain when working in the garden. Tip number 5, always carry and transport your tools properly. Be sure not to grab too many at once so that they do not drop on yours or someone else's feet. Tip number 6, if a job that you're doing is hurting or straining your body, be sure to take a moment, step back, and reevaluate what you're doing. If it hurts, you probably shouldn't be doing it that way. At all times, you should try to keep your back straight, standing on your feet with your hands close to your chest whenever using a tool. Now that we're prepared and you know what to do, let's take a look at some of the tools that we're going to be using in the garden today to help you achieve your gardening goals. Let's start with the easiest tools to explain, shovels and spades. Now, you may have seen these a lot, and you may have questioned, what is the difference? As you can see, a spade has a more pointed and sharp edge. This is much more useful for digging into and breaking and cracking the earth. Whereas you can see over here on the shovels, it has a much wider face and larger carrying area. So this is much more useful for either softer materials or using material that you have already broken and dug up with your spade. Up next is the rake. Rakes are really great for moving small amounts of material short distances, especially within the garden bed. Rakes can also be used for roughing up the soil to make it a little bit easier to move in small amounts, especially on the surface. And the back end can be used to flatten or level the surface, making it easier to apply other amendments and measure out where you're going to plant your next plants. Here we have a pitchfork. This can be used for many different things around the garden, but the most beneficial one that we'll be talking about today is being used to break the soil and for harvesting. So when you're growing things like carrots or turnips that can grow very deeply into the soil, what you want to do is use this to break up the soil next to the plants that you're harvesting in order to soften it and make it easier to pull them out without breaking them. Here we have 2 weeding implements. One of them, a peasant hoe, and the other one, a stirrup hoe. Both of these are fantastic because they allow you to weed the earth without having to get onto your hands and knees. You can stay standing with your back nice and straight, preventing as much strain as possible. A quick note here on tool sharpening. It's really important that you spend a little bit of extra time, especially at the beginning of the season, to make sure that your tools are sharp and are in good working order. This is something that I see all the time that is neglected at every garden or farm that I go to. And honestly, it's very simple to sharpen your tools. All you need is a tool to sharpen and a nice file, something that is strong and coarse to be able to hold comfortably in your hand so it doesn't slip out while you're doing your sharpening. There are a lot of powered tools that you can get as well, but today we're just going to be covering some hand tools instead. So, as you can see here, we have quite a blunt tool. This was sharpened earlier in the year, and through the usage, it has already dulled itself. So this is a perfect example to show you guys how we can easily sharpen this shovel. The first thing that you're going to want to do is you want to hold your file nice and firm in your hand, and you want to make sure that the flat end is what you're doing all of the work with. You don't want to use this curved end. It won't help you in this step. And the other thing that we want to be aware of is that when we're using this, we're trying to cut a particular angle into the edge of the spade here. We don't want to make it too sharp or too dull. We want to make it just right. This is a simple demonstration of how you do it. You always want to make sure that you're filing in one direction. Do not go back and forth. That will cause the part that you just sharpened to go dull again. You also want to start at the head of the shovel and move your file down towards the point. Because we cut this way with our file on the first one, we want to maintain that file, that sharp edge, going that way. So when using the other side, we'll have to pull as opposed to push.